NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Israel struck dozens of targets in Iran, including a nuclear research site, prompting Tehran to hold nuclear talks until bombing ceases, while the UK, France, Germany, and EU diplomats push for diplomacy and Trump mulls a US strike decision within 2 weeks, according to reports. Russia and Ukraine have completed a new prisoner swap, freeing over 1,000 wounded, ill, or young soldiers each, as agreed during Istanbul talks, according to Russia's defense ministry. While a Russian drone strike killed 1 person and injured 14 people in Odessa, according to reports. Philippine Navy seized $175 million worth of meth in a massive operation at sea. This is one of the largest drug hauls in its history, spokesman John Percy Alcos confirmed to media reports. Pro-government protests erupted across Tehran in support of Supreme Leader Khamenei, according to local state media, as Macron voiced that Europe seeks diplomatic solution to Iran-Israel war as it enters its second week of clash today. Romanian President Nicos Ardan has appointed pro-European Liberal Party leader Ilie Bolojan as Prime Minister after weeks of political talks, according to media reports. UK lawmakers have voted 314 to 291 in favor of a historic assisted dying bill for terminally ill adults, moving it to the House of Lords for review. The proposal, backed by Labour MP Kim Leadbeater, is also supported by 73% of the public, according to media reports. US has rejected visas for members of Senegal's women's basketball team set to train in US cities tighter border controls, while a US appeals court ruled Trump can retain control of National Guard troops in Los Angeles, according to local officials. UN Rights Chief Volker Turk has warned of disastrous consequences from escalating clashes in Sudan's North Darfur and Kordofan, saying the spreading violence risks worsening civilian abuses and human suffering over 2 years into the war, according to a UN statement. Iran's foreign minister is holding talks with counterparts from Britain, France, Germany, and the EU in Geneva, launching a new round of negotiations in Tehran's nuclear program. This diplomatic push follows US President Donald Trump's statement that he will decide within 2 weeks whether to join the assault on Tehran. As talks began, the U.S. Treasury Department announced fresh sanctions against Iran, listing the new measures on its official website. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations criticized the talks, warning they must lead to tangible results. "We cannot accept just another round of talks," he said, calling for a real action to dismantle Iran's nuclear capabilities. Israel's Magen David Adom Rescue Service reported that shrapnel injured 2 people, adding to fears of further escalation on the ground. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi accused Israel of sabotaging diplomacy through its attacks. Speaking to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, he said Israel attacked US amid an ongoing diplomatic process. He added that Iran and the United States had been close to reaching a promising agreement before the incident. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan warned that the escalating Iran-Israel confrontation is nearing the point of no return as the United States considers possible involvement in the growing crisis. Now we have Dr. Wael Awad joining us as a Middle East affairs expert from New Delhi. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us today. How significant are these Geneva talks for the future of Iran's nuclear program and the current war, especially with the EU3 and Iran meeting in the parallel to US threats of military action?
Thank you for having me. I think the talks is already taking place, and there was some declaration a few minutes ago that there is a window open for a peaceful solution to the Iranian nuclear program if there is a political will to this. Therefore, we come back to square one that there is always a solution to the nuclear deal, but the going for a war was the hurdles that they have created, and now the situation has gone out of control, and that's why we are thinking now that maybe these countries can put some pressure on the United States and Israel to bring them back to the table and negotiate with the United States on the Iranian nuclear deal. Because remember, on the sixth round of talk, it was scheduled for Oman on Muscat on last Sunday, but 2 days before the meeting, Israel started its own war on Iran, hoping that they can have a regime change, they can destroy the leaderships, and they have targeted more than 300 places. So they killed the score of people, but they could not kill Ayatollah Khamenei, and he survived, and they absorbed this attack, and they went back now onto the war. So therefore, I think the talk on Geneva should continue, and we all remember that there was a nuclear deal in 2015 with the United States and P plus 5 plus 1, and they had the Germany included, and then the United States pulled out in 2018. President Trump himself, thinking that he can bring a better deal, employed the maximum sanction on Iran, and now a preemptive attack have brought us into the disastrous situation where we are now.
But like, can we progress? Can we expect a progress and meaningful progress when U.S. sanctions just came in and they're simultaneously being ramped up even as talks begin?
Well, you see, if the United States is willing directly to go for a confrontation with Iran, then I think we are heading for a regional war, because that is what Prime Minister Netanyahu has been calling on the United States to come forward and take part and save Israel from the bombardment that they have been subjected of the retaliation by the Iranian government. So I think the situation is very dire at the moment, and there are backdoor diplomacy which is also taking place, because a regime change by force is a policy that even President Trump has opposed to it because of his previous predecessors. They started in Afghanistan, ended in Libya and Syria. So I think now they don't want to have that sort of a regime change policy. If he is not for a war, then he is the right person to stop this war.
And building on that current situation, to what extent, according to you, can the EU act as an independent mediator now, given the pressures from both Washington as well as Tel Aviv and the rest of the Middle East? Just now, President also Recep Tayyip Erdogan also just commented on the situation.
I think everybody in the region is concerned. It's not only the European Union. All the regional parties, all the GCC countries, all people wanted a war except for Israel. No one else wanted this war, by the way. And that is why Europeans may not be in a position to impose their views on Israel and the United States, because totally they are behind the United States. And we know that taking part in protecting Israel, they are taking part in the logistic support, they are taking part even in the attack on Iranian installation. And we understand where they are present in the Strait of Hormuz, they are present inside Jordan, they are present inside Israel. So I don't think we should give them the carte blanche that they are innocent of what's going on in the region. But I think because Iran having the upper hand right now, they are unable to control the ballistic missile of Iran, which has been able to surpass all these domes and all these air defense systems and hit the target. So I think we should be expecting an international community to take a stronger position on this issue, because nobody wanted a war in this region. Imagine if tomorrow Iran attacked the nuclear sites of Israel, where they're having the Emuna military nuclear installation. And if they're attacking the Iranian one, who will be suffering? It is the radiation that will be from that part inflicted and everybody of our people living in that part of the world. So I think it's not of anybody's interest to continue this war.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wael Awad, for joining us and sharing your expertise as Middle East affairs expert. Now we move on to our next story on the latest on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia says they have completed another prisoner of war exchange with Ukraine while also claiming control of the Moskivka region in Ukraine's Kharkiv area. The Kremlin has declined to predict if a Putin-Trump meeting will happen this year, citing global instability. Moscow continues its special military operation in Ukraine, favoring diplomacy but acknowledging Kyiv's unpredictability. Talks with Ukraine are still ongoing, with the next round expected next week. Meanwhile, Russia's state atomic energy corporation, Rosatom, has reported no incidents at the Bushehr nuclear power plant in Iran last night. Rosatom head Alexei Likhachev said that they hope all messages sent yesterday have reached Israeli leadership and assured the public that work at the plant continues as normal. However, Russia has warned that a strike on the Bushehr plant could trigger a disaster comparable to the 1986 Chernobyl catastrophe. With the situation still evolving, Likhachev confirmed that dozens of Russian specialists have been evacuated from Iran. However, he added that for now, Russia is still prepared to keep its workers at Bushehr and is ready for any scenario, including rapid evacuation if necessary. President Vladimir Putin also said this week that there are currently 250 Russian personnel at the Bushehr plant. And lastly, a Russian drone strike on the Ukrainian city of Odessa has left one person dead and at least 14 injured. According to local authorities, Ukraine's Air Force reported that Russia launched 86 drones overnight, with 34 shot down and 36 neutralized through electronic warfare or found to be decoys. Now we have guest discussion on this topic. Daniel Wagner is joining us. He's the CEO of Country Risk Solutions, joining us live from US Portland. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. With Russia launching 86 drones in a single night, is Ukraine's air defense still holding the line effectively, or are we seeing signs of saturation and vulnerability?
It's pretty clear that the Ukrainian air defenses are under pressure. And the question really is, to what extent can it be replenished and when? And of course, this raises the larger question about its offensive capabilities in the absence of strong or unflinching US support. Now, if the Europeans have to pick up the slack, and that seems to be the direction we're heading, that raises a bunch of other questions. For example, the extent to which they will be able to maintain their own unity, the extent to which they will have the funds to increase support for Ukraine, the extent to which public support will remain intact in Europe. And the problem with getting any European action, of course, is that they need to be unanimous in order to get things done. And that raises all sorts of potential issues.
And building on that, how do repeated prisoner of war exchanges factor into the broader conflict? Are they signs of a back channel thaw or merely tactical humanitarian optics?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I think this is a sort of a natural thing to do at any point in a war if both sides are agreeable. I don't think it portends any particular significance in terms of the strategic objectives of both sides. My hope is that those exchanges will continue.
And now moving to Kremlin, the Kremlin has avoided confirming a potential Putin and US President Donald Trump's meeting. What would such a meeting signal to US allies, especially in Europe and the NATO?
Well, I think this is one of those instances where I would say seeing is believing. Putin, of course, has been viewing this as a bit of a chessboard, and he continues to obfuscate and make moves that would be contrary to the objectives of peace. Trump, of course, is now a little preoccupied with what's going on in the Middle East. And so, unfortunately for Ukraine, their whole strategic positioning has shifted, not to their benefit, because of what's going on in the Middle East and other priorities that the US and, for example, other countries have. So I don't think that Ukraine is going to be disappearing from the scene, But it's pretty clear also with the G7 meeting and Ukraine not coming away with any new commitments for aid that they're in a precarious position.
And now that Russia has reminded us of the catastrophe in Chernobyl, how serious is Russia's warning about this Chernobyl-scale disaster if Israel strikes the Bushehr nuclear plant? Is this legitimate concern or just maybe strategic deterrence?
Well, I think there's some legitimacy to it. We just have to look at what happened in Chernobyl to know that it's certainly a possibility. I don't know to what extent the Iranians have actually taken Bushehr offline or not, and I don't know to what extent that will necessarily impact fallout from direct attacks on Bushehr. But I can say that's certainly a legitimate concern.
And given the evacuation of Russian specialists from Iran, and also Russia has confirmed that 250 people are still there or were there, what are the commercial and diplomatic risks for Russia's nuclear partnerships abroad?
Russia's under pressure in a more general context, not just in this, in terms of their trade with Iran. They have a very significant shadow trade in oil and other commodities with Iran. And they, like the Chinese, will be impacted by what is happening in Iran and what could be happening in Iran in the future. If the Iranians decide to curtail the flow of oil out of the Persian Gulf, that's going to affect Russia as well as China and many other countries, including India.
And is there a risk of accidental escalation between Russia and Israel, especially with Russian personnel still operating in Iran? From what we know, that Russia hasn't evacuated all of their people yet.
I would say that's less likely. Neither the Israelis nor the Russians nor anyone else want to escalate the possibility that there's going to be an accidental war. I think they're treading very carefully around one another at the present time. The idea being they both have full plates and they don't need any new problems as a result of something that was unanticipated.
Thank you very much, Daniel Wagner, for joining us today and sharing your expertise as country risks solution for our conversation. Now we move on to our next story. An appeals court has allowed President Donald Trump to keep control of National Guard troops he deployed to Los Angeles following protests over immigration raids. The decision halts a ruling from a lower court judge who found Trump acted illegally when he activated the soldiers over opposition from California Governor Gavin Newsom. It also found that even if the federal government failed to notify the governor of California before federalizing the National Guard as required by law, Newsom had no power to veto the president's order. Trump celebrated the decision on his Truth Social platform, calling it a big win. He wrote that all over the United States, if our cities and our people need protection, we are the ones to give it to them should state and local police be unable, for whatever reason, to get the job done. Meanwhile, Newsom issued a statement that expressed disappointment that the court is allowing Trump to retain control of the Guard, but he also welcomed one aspect of the decision. Now we have guests joining us for this discussion. John Rossomando, he's the president of Viking Research, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you, John, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. What precedent does this ruling set regarding a president's authority to deploy National Guard troops over the objections of a state governor?
Well, what it does is reaffirm the president's powers under the United States Constitution as the commander-in-chief of all armed forces of the United States, including we used to call state militias, now National Guard. I think that Gavin Newsom acted out of order, and the Democrats, when they said the president didn't have the authority to federalize the National Guard. mean, you have precedents back in the 1950s when President Eisenhower federalized the Arkansas National Guard to open the Little Rock High School to minorities.
And building on this, what does this decision mean for blue state governors like Newsom, who may strongly oppose Trump's federal law enforcement policies?
It means they can't be obstructionists to the president's power. We have, federal supremacy under our Constitution. Rogue state governors don't have the right to subvert, federal law and federal officers from carrying out their constitutional duties. So this is a big blow to, those who are trying to subvert our Constitution.
And does this decision effectively weaken the constitutional balance between federal and state powers in matters of domestic security then?
It does not. It reaffirms what the U.S. Constitution says in Article 4, that the federal government has supremacy over the states. I mean, it's not, we fought a civil war over 4 years in the 1860s because the states decided that they had the power, not the federal government. So, the Democrats are acting reckless and irresponsible here.
And, President Trump argued the deployment was necessary to maintain order after immigration-related protests. Was there a legitimate national security justification for this?
Well, under California's California Values Act of 2016, I think, the California authorities, such as the LAPD, were not allowed to work with ICE agents on deportation. This gave the president the ability and the authority to protect his ICE agents from being harassed and attacked by unruly mobs of anti-ICE protesters.
And is there a danger of militarizing responses to civilian protests, especially in an election year?
Well, let's put it this way. If you have the state authorities refusing to do their jobs to quell violent riots, then the federal government, should step in and pick up the slack, because you have a right to protest peacefully. You don't have a right to obstruct. You don't have a right to throw Molotov cocktails. You don't have a right to assault police officers. So the president did the right thing.
You will stay with us, John, as we take one breaking news right now. We have a breaking news. Russia has demanded Israel to immediately cease attacks and raids on Iran. Russia also said that targeting of Iran's peaceful civilian nuclear facilities liable to plunge U.S. into a Hitler to unseen nuclear catastrophe. Meanwhile, Russia's UN ambassador blames Israel for attacking Iran, disregarding diplomatic efforts. Now we move back to our guest discussion. John, if you could hear me, should we expect more legal challenges from governors if Trump continues to deploy troops in Democrat-controlled cities or states?
Well, lawfare is the Democrats' way of doing things. They'll bring challenges, but then they'll be swatted down in the courts, because ultimately the Constitution gives the president, as the commander-in-chief, the authority and the discretion to deploy the National Guard and federalize it to quell uprisings, quell disturbances, when you have state authorities who won't do their job. President Trump learned from the George Floyd riots of 2020 that he can't trust the governors.
And from a national risk perspective, how do you assess the stability of intergovernmental cooperation if such rulings become the norm?
Well, all I have to say is that we used to simply accept that the Constitution gives the president and the federal authority supremacy. But in recent years, we've had those who question and reject it. So I think it's the Democrats pushing constitutional crises to serve their political goals in the ballot box.
Thank you very much, John Rossomando, for joining us and sharing your insight and expertise with us all the way from Portland. Now we move on to our next story. Lawmakers in Britain have narrowly approved a bill to legalize assisted dying for terminally ill people, following a heated national debate that cut across political, religious, and legal lines. MPs passed the bill by 314 votes to 291 in what marked their final say on the matter. The legislation now heads to the House of Lords for further scrutiny. Today's vote puts Britain on course to join a small group of countries that have legalized the practice and would make it one of the most populous to do so. Under the bill, individuals with a terminal illness and a life expectancy of less than 6 months could choose to end their lives with a prescribed substance, provided they can make the decision themselves, and receive approval from 2 doctors and a designated panel. Canada, New Zealand, Spain, and most of Australia permit assisted dying in some form, along with several U.S. states, including Oregon, Washington, and California. Now we have a breaking news. Amid the escalating tensions between China and Iran, China has said that Iranian nuclear issue must be returned to the track of dialogue and negotiation. China also said Israel should cease fire in Iran conflict as soon as possible to prevent situation escalating. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.